Coming up, a look at when it's the best and worst time to visit Walt Disney World in Central Florida.
Hello my friends, it's David here from Beyond the Kingdoms, and welcome to what I'm calling First Timers Week. A lot of people who come to my channel are often planning their very first trip to Walt Disney World. And naturally, they come with a lot of questions, since there's a lot to unpack when planning your first big Disney trip. So I wanted to create a set of videos to help those of you in the early pre-planning phase. And some of the topics we'll tackle this week include when to visit, where to stay, tickets, technology, and transportation. Now I know others will not consider themselves to be first timers per se, but maybe it's been a really long time since you've last visited, and you've got some questions about some of the big changes. Well, no matter if this is your first time or your first time in a while, I hope this week's set of videos help you plan your next vacation. So let's kick things off with the best times to visit Walt Disney World.
Before I jump into the different seasons of the year and when you might want to plan your very first trip to Walt Disney World, I want to provide one major stipulation. There is no one simple answer to when it's the best time to visit that will work for everyone. Defining the best time to visit the parks is really down to three different aspects: price, weather, and crowd size. So you first have to decide what you prioritize the most of these three topics. Is the price of hotels and flights the major factor? Can you work around the busy times and travel during the off-season? And most of all, you have to learn a little bit about Florida weather patterns so you don't get rained out at the most magical place on earth. Right off the bat, I can say that my favorite time to visit Walt Disney World is during the months of January and February. January is the second cheapest month out of the year to travel to Disney World in terms of the price of hotels and tickets. The crowds are also very light, especially in that first 2 weeks of the year when everyone is recovering from the holidays. From there, the price and crowds slowly start to climb, but things will still stay very good throughout the month of February. This is also when my personal favorite Epcot event takes place, Festival of the Arts. For the past few years, Disney has scheduled this visual and culinary arts festival from around Martin Luther King Jr. weekend to the end of February. For my international viewers, MLK Day always falls on the third Monday of January. Festival of the Arts will usually start the Wednesday prior to that. But there are two curveballs if you travel in the months of January and February. While MLK Day is a federal holiday and Epcot gets a bit of a bump when it comes to the crowds, don't underestimate President's Day. This federal holiday always falls on the third Monday of February, and all four parks see a significant spike in the crowds. A lot of locals and Floridians use this weekend for a quick little getaway. Pricing is still somewhat moderate and the weather is absolutely fantastic, but the crowds really can surprise you, so manage your expectations. I also have to admit that these 2 months may not be the best time of the year if you plan to do a lot of pool days. While rainstorms are really scarce at this time of year, temperatures can be surprisingly low, sometimes dipping down into the 50s. Now, I know that you snowbirds will laugh at me and think that's pretty mild, but it may not be the best time to visit a water park or book a stay at a resort with a killer pool. So just keep that in mind. Let's next move on to the spring months, starting in March and ending in May. Like January and February, these 3 months are excellent when it comes to the weather. It's not too hot, and you're still not in official hurricane season. Pricing at this time of year is in the middle of the scale, as are the crowds. But each month is slightly different, and you have to keep spring break in mind. Crowds in March are pretty good. This is also usually when Flower and Garden kicks off at Epcot. In terms of pricing, March is usually slightly more expensive than May or April, but I think it can still be doable. April is the one month in spring that I would personally avoid if you can, but that may not work with school schedules. Spring break in Florida happens in waves. Different parts of the Sunshine State have different events throughout the season, and school spring break schedules can vary. But the week leading up to Easter is actually one of the busiest weeks of the year and the second most expensive time to visit Disney World. Now, the weather is excellent, but the crowds could be unbearable. In fact, some annual pass holders, just like myself, have this week blocked out as well as the week of Christmas. So that is always a clear sign that Disney expects big crowds. But I do have to admit that if you have to keep travel dates strictly in line with school breaks, I would consider spring break to be better than the weeks around Christmas. Now, May is often the cheapest month in spring, but as you slowly approach June, the crowds will build again and the temperatures will begin to rise. And this naturally leads me to the summer, which some consider to start with Memorial Day at the end of May and finish on Labor Day at the start of September. Now, summer is a really tricky time of year. When I was a kid, the summer months at Disney were absolutely packed. This was when lots of new rides would open. The price was a little high and the temperatures would rise to unbearable levels. But this has led to a dip in summer crowds for the past few years. I think those living out of the Sunshine State have slowly started to learn that parks like Animal Kingdom in July and August are simply too hot and uncomfortable. So for the past few years, I've told Floridians and others that if you can handle the heat, you can consider summer, but pack lots of sunscreen and go really slow. Good deals for residents have sprung up in summer recently, and there's usually lots of flexibility with dates since kids are out of school for almost all 3 months. But I think after the events of 2020, this summer in particular will be busier than normal. I have a feeling pent-up demand will cause the parks to explode with guests. But it will be interesting to see if this is a one-off occurrence or change summer patterns long-term. But regardless of that, I just want to say this. June can be pretty busy as kids finish up school and cap off the year with a trip to Disney. It's hot, but still bearable for those who are not used to it. And then from there, crowds will build up all the way to 4th of July. And after Christmas and Easter, this is the next busiest holiday at the parks. But after 4th of July, there is a big vacuum effect. Depending on what day of the week Independence Day falls, a trip to Disney right after could be fantastic. The crowds weed out and the prices will drop a little bit. These days, it's cheaper to travel in summer over spring. And in 2022, 4th of July falls on a Monday. So I think there'll be some heavy crowds for the entire weekend prior, some lingering guests on Monday and Tuesday, and by Wednesday, things should clear out. So if you celebrate 4th of July at home, then travel to Disney, you could have an excellent summer vacation. From there, crowds will slowly build to the end of summer, and there's usually one final push around the end of August before kids get back to school. So June to July 4th is busier than the tail end of the summer, but the temperatures will skyrocket in August. So if you travel in these later months, stay hydrated and plan lots of breaks back at the resort in the middle of the day when you can go for a quick dip in the pool. And this naturally takes us to the fall and the start of the holidays. From Labor Day all the way to New Year's Eve, there are lots of events that happen at Walt Disney World. But the crowd, price, and weather can go on a roller coaster ride. For my international friends, Labor Day marks the end of summer, and it's always celebrated on the first Monday of September. By this point, almost all of the kids are back in school, and for Disney, this is usually when Food and Wine begins at Epcot, and when Halloween parties are already in full swing at the Magic Kingdom. It's a federal holiday, so most people do get the day off, but this is probably the least busy holiday weekend of the year, and this month is definitely the cheapest time of year. But before you go booking that vacation, you have to know one thing. September is often considered to be peak hurricane season. Florida doesn't really experience 4 seasons out of the year. We have a wet season when hurricanes come and a dry season. Hurricane season officially starts on June 1st and ends on November 30th. But from mid-August to mid-October, you have to be ready for the possibility of a big storm coming in. So if you choose to travel at this time because you don't have kids and the crowds are really low and prices are cheap, really explore your cancellation policies and be prepared for some bad weather. Even if a hurricane doesn't come through, a classic Florida thunderstorm will take place nearly every afternoon around 3 o'clock. Now, I would consider October to be the March of the fall season. The weather starts to improve a little bit and crowds are moderate. But if Not So Scary returns to the Magic Kingdom this year or next, I would completely avoid the Halloween event on the actual week of October 31st. It's just too expensive and too crowded. And this brings us to the holidays. Now at Disney, the big holiday events start at the very beginning of November. That first week of the month is usually when the Christmas parties begin at Magic Kingdom, and holiday events debut at Hollywood Studios and Animal Kingdom. Crowds and pricing are moderate, but they definitely jump up from the previous 2 months. After that first week, things will level out throughout November until you get to Thanksgiving, which is always the final Thursday of the month. For a first-timer, I would not go to Disney the week of Thanksgiving. It's the busiest week of the year when it comes to flying across America, and the prices will spike. Some veterans who have visited Disney before can enjoy a long weekend here and make it work. It's certainly better than the week of Christmas. However, just like I mentioned with 4th of July, there is usually another clear out right after Thanksgiving. So that first week of December is equally as good as the first week of November, if you want to see Disney World in its full holiday glory. And by this point, Festival of the Holidays is well underway at Epcot. And that means all 4 parks will be completely adorned with beautiful holiday decorations. But after that first week of December, things start to steadily climb to Christmas and New Year's. This final week of the month is absolutely the busiest week of the year. As magical as it may sound to spend the holidays at Disney World, the experience really is not, especially for a newbie. In fact, I myself have completely stopped visiting Disney World at this time of year. It's just not worth it.
So there you have it, my friends. A few tips covering the best time to visit Walt Disney World. And as you can see, there is not one simple answer that will work for everyone. But I hope based on what you prioritize the most, you found a good starting point on when to plan your first Disney vacation. Come back tomorrow for day 2 of First Timers Week as we take the next step in the pre-planning phase, looking at some of the best places to stay at. You won't want to miss it. But until then, thank you so much for watching. Please stay safe out there, and remember, you can dream it, you can do it.